All right, welcome back to another Koenji Shawn Reviews. And this video is an interview I did with Gaijinguy, fellow YouTube creator who focuses, of course, on manga, but mostly manga history, alt manga, retro manga, some Kashihon era stuff, a bit of everything. So definitely follow the link down below and check out his page. What we did was we did a Zoom call last week for a few hours. I interviewed him, he interviewed me. The interview of me, he is going to post on his page, and my interview of him, you are watching right now. We did do it over Zoom, so we tried our best to clean it up afterwards, but I think there's some really useful content in there, especially for those of you who have followed our channels before, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's go. Actually, this is a good segue just to get into it, if I can start asking some questions. So, why Kumamoto? What got you down there? I know that you're up here for a long time, and you mentioned that you're in Kanagawa. How'd you end up down there?
So I lived 20 years in and around Tokyo. And the longer I stayed there, the thicker my southern accent got, because I never had a southern accent when I lived in the South. Because my parents, like my stepdad's from Houston. He does have a bit of a Texas, but I don't have a Texas. And my mom is from the Midwest. So I actually grew up very flat, like Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, flat accent. And I think what happened is after I moved to Japan, I started needing some, like, to kind of firm up my identity. It's like I never bought cowboy boots until I moved to Japan. I never had a cowboy hat. I always made fun of the people in the South who had, you don't even have a horse. What are you doing? You know,
What do you wear cowboy boots for?
Yeah. But I love them now. Like, I love cowboy boots. They feel like nice ones with the nice leather. Nice, you know, and you always want to put your foot up on stuff like in the movies. So my wife is from the town that I live in, Mifune, which is it's south of the city, but it's basically central, right in the middle of Kumamoto, which is right in the middle of Kyushu. And I came here for the first time to ask her parents for her hand in marriage. And they said no. They said no. Her dad looked me in the eyes and said, okay, you're 16 years older, you're divorced, you're fat. You realize you're not what we had in mind. You don't play golf. And I looked him right in the eyes and I said, I know on this earth, there's nobody who's gonna love your daughter more than I do. And I got his mom, like, got her. I got her. And he was so upset that he couldn't say anything back to that. He actually got tears in his eyes, and he just wasn't ready to let go of his little girl. You know, the older sister hadn't been married yet. And so she actually stayed in Kumamoto to make it happen. And so we had, you know, several months apart, which I'd never had a relationship survive that. But the fact that it did made it very clear that I was making the right choice. She's also like the first person I met in Japan that we could have deep discussions about books, about, you know, that kind of thing. And the fact that she was in her 20s when I met her just didn't make any sense. That we were talking about, you know, Kafka and Tolstoy and stuff. And so
I had a similar situation when I met my wife. I was on vacation in Osaka, and she was going to Handai in the graduate studies program for literature and she was translating. She's translating Japanese literature. Actually, she was translating Korean resident Korean Japanese literature from the early Zainichi stuff. So, and then of course I'm a big reader. Of course she was a big reader. And then when we met each other, it kind of, the stars aligned. And then I was living in Tokyo, but she had just started her degree she'd only been down there for a few months. So it was a good year. I think it was about a year and 9 months of a long distance relationship. Of course, me traveling down when I could and her traveling up when she could. But sometimes that's just the way it works out. And at the end, it was, are we going to stay and go to Osaka or come back up here to Tokyo? And then we ended up here in Tokyo. So I almost ended up on that side of the country.
Wow, cool beans. So, we were in Tokyo, and we had an apartment outside of Tokyo in Chiba. And we'd start our life. We had a little girl. Our daughter was born, and like shuffling her around from our place to the station was quite a haul. It's a bumpy little path. You go through a temple surrounded by graveyards. I remember one time we were walking to the station, and my daughter looks at something above the graveyard, and she goes, bye, bye, bye. And we're like, looking at it. And so, it wasn't a very convenient situation, and we didn't want to live really too deep in the city either. And her father said, well, if y'all want to build a house, I will help you out. Oh, by the way, me and her father, we got on very well after the
initial bumpy road.
Yeah, because there was the thing was he really didn't have anything against me. I had to go through all kinds of hoops, like this is the first time I've had to submit a resume for a relationship.
Did you have to learn golf also?
No. I went with him once. I had one good shot, and then the rest of it was me going, miss, and he's like, no, I can't play with you. I don't have the patience. So, excuse me. Damn. So, I was a contract employee at Yahoo Japan, doing translation for the legal department. And contract employee means there's a deadline to my contract, and I couldn't get anybody to really be clear about what's going to happen after that. Like, are y'all going to try to keep me on, or what's going to happen? So I decided let's make the move. And if I have to start from zero, I'll start from zero. I've done it tons of times. But I convinced Yahoo to keep paying me as a outside contractor. So the start was, it was a good start.
Yeah, that's something that happens with a lot of us foreigners living here in Japan, especially long term, is you don't get the seishin or the permanent employee treatment that your Japanese coworkers get, and you're a contract or dispatch employee, and you don't get a lot of the benefits, and you never know what's going to happen next year. And I think many of us have experienced this here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bucho kind of did what he could within those parameters, but like there was some programs which I couldn't be a part of, and he kind of didn't want me to become a full seishin, because once you become a full seishin at Yahoo, twice a year you get the opportunity to petition to join another team.
If you want to transfer out of your department.
Yeah, and I was like, bring me to the movies, I want to work for,
Yeah.
And the contents, get me to the contents. But I didn't say that, but he's, I think that he maybe could sense that, legal translation was maybe not my first love.
Then moving away from legal translation and more into academia, and of course you are researching monsters and yokai and Japanese folklore, things like this. How did that happen? How did you go from because I actually work at a patent law firm, as that's my day job when I'm not making manga videos, and I mean, it's kind of something that I fell into, and I wonder how you made that transition from that Yahoo to where you are now.
Well, see, I'd already had quite a varied career in the first place. I started out, I worked at a really small company which had an English school, but they're like, we also want to do IT. So, you know, I was making lessons, like these complicated lesson plans, because they had all kinds of rules of what they, you know, you had to make very detailed lesson plans your first several months, which I get it because I got really good at it and I can still make a lesson off the top of my head now. But they also wanted to do this new IT thing. I had learned how to make databases. I learned how to do networks, and which is, like I said, I wasn't a STEM guy, but I was kind of brought along. I started doing like HTML because this is 1994. I started, and I remember like learning to do how to do animated GIFs and this kind of thing. And yeah, it was, but we had a big client who I was doing most of the work for, and they decided not to pay us. And so I had just gotten my first and only bonus, and I had already proposed to my first wife at that point, and he's like, I don't think I can pay you for a while. And I was like, I just proposed, you know, it'll work. And so one of our clients, which was the support school, the independent, like alternative high school, I decided to work for them full time, and I worked there for 9 years because they kept challenging me and giving me more responsibility. And one of the guys I worked with there, when he got married, he gave me that back row hidden behind the lamp right there, you can't quite see it, of like Galaxy Express 39, Blackjack, Hokuto Ken, Cyborg 009, all his hardback collection stuff. He's like, you want to take any of this? And I was like, I want to take all of it. Unfortunately, I let go of the Cyborg 009 stuff, and I'm rebuying different versions of it now. But so after that, I was asked by a college friend. She was like, you speak English, right? And I was like, a little. And she says, do you want to work for K1? And I was like, all right. And I've always, when somebody said, hey, do you want to try this? And I was like, okay. Hey, I want to stick this knife in your liver. Have you ever done that? No. Okay, yeah. Let's try it.
Let's go for it.
So yeah, I was a yes man. I just, all right, give it a whirl. And that led to other things. You know, I built a whole network within the martial arts community, which
I saw the interview that you had done, the interpreting that you did for Sakuraba.
Yeah, then that was the lucky thing, is because a friend of mine who I met through Kyo, and he was like, he mailed me, and I found his mail in my spam, and it said, this guy keeps trying to contact me, and I know that you're working with Sakuraba's manager, and he wants to talk to him about something. And it ended up they wanted to give him UFC Hall of Fame, and so we went together. We worked on the speech and everything, and he got inducted, and I got to interpret. But it was, you know, I had already translated the speech and made it perfect, so it's not off the cuff.
Yeah, that simultaneous or that consecutive even interpretation is just so difficult.
Yeah, and I don't do what a lot of interpreters do. A lot of interpreters will not restate what they're saying because they know it makes them look like they're not confident. But for me, it's much more important that I get the actual message across. So I don't mind looking like, you know, I'm a stuttering fool if I can get the message across. But most, they will tell you don't restate, just bulldoze through so that you'll get hired next time. You know?
You're like, I don't care what people think of me as long as everyone understands what's being said here.
It's the message is everything. So.
Yeah, tough stuff. Actually, we talked a little bit about this before, but since you're from Kumamoto, the Kumamoto area, and so are so many other great mangaka, you have Koga, you have Umez around that same area, right? And then you have who else? Some of the 49ers, right? Hagio.
Well, Hagiomoto is
Yeah.
you've got you have two interesting guys. You know, there was that big Star of the Giants, which is the big sports comic, and I'm not a sports comic guy either, but the writer of that, who did all the sports stuff, Kajiwara Iki, and the artist of that, Kawasaki Noboru, who I've introduced on my channel because he did a lot of Kashihon stuff. They both have a strong connection to Kumamoto. One of them just is just infatuated with Kumamoto, and so he's got a very strong, like, personal. He's not from here, but the writer has a very strong connection to Kumamoto. The artist now lives in Kumamoto. But besides these creators, and there's a bunch, you have One Piece, Oda Eiichiro, you've got Slam Dunk and Vagabonds, Inoue Takihiko, they're both from Kumamoto.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, Vagabond is one of my all-time favorites. One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, so but when I came here, I was, first of all, I didn't know anybody. I only knew my wife's friends, and so I needed community, and so I looked for groups that I could join. I found like a Kumamoto International, like, online groups, a couple. I found a board gaming group, and one time, just wandering around, there was an art show, and they said, would you like more information if we do anything? And I put my name down, and they never contacted me, but I ran into them again somehow, coincidentally, and they're like, oh, you're that guy. You're that one guy who signed our do you want more information?
The one guy.
Yeah. And through one of the members of that group, he's like, what are you into? He's an animator, and I was like, well, I do animation, but I'm more into manga. And he's like, oh, you have to meet Mr. Hashimoto. I was like, okay. And he goes, and he's having this event where it's like a talk event. He's meeting with one of the Gainax guys at a bar, and I went to the event and listened. It was fascinating. I didn't know who the Gainax guy was. I mean, I heard of all the things that he'd worked on and stuff. I was like, oh, cool. And I talked with Hashimoto briefly, and he said you should come to volunteer at the the Kumamoto Manga Museum project, when you can. And I went there and I helped move books around, and we talked about comics for like full-on half hour. And the guy who was in the same office with us, he said, there aren't many people who can keep up with Hashimoto when it comes to talking about comics like you did. And I was like, oh. And it was that time when Hashimoto said, you should present something. You should present something. Would you like to present something? And I was like, all right, I wonder what I should present. And I settled on horror. And that's where I learned about, he introduced me to Hino Hideshi, he introduced me to Kashihon, he introduced me to Kaidan and all Kaidan. This whole world I didn't know existed. And after I found it, and I did this presentation, and the presentation itself was right after the Kumamoto earthquake, the house that I just built, shaken,
But not destroyed, luckily.
Not destroyed, but still, it's like I bought a 10-year-old house when I paid a new house price. And, all these shelves were on the floor. And it was a good thing. The sofa used to be over there, and it's a good thing I wasn't on it at the time.
Jeez.
But that I did the presentation. It was right at the same month as the second big earthquake, because it straddled that April-May, and it was successful. I mean, I got really good feedback. I did a comparison of Japanese and American horror, and I chose horror because I thought it's niche. It's focused, it's niche. No, it's so wide and so deep. I did not sleep for the longest time. learning more and more. It's like I kept digging more and more. And then that's when I hadn't read any Umezu for 20 years. And I had to open him back up and rediscover him because I had nailed the coffin shut on Umezu.
I was going to ask you that. Why? Why would you nail the coffin shut on a great like Umez? Which one was it that you read when you that 20 years ago?
I think there was a collection called Kyofu, like fear, and there is a story where there is a father and a daughter, and the father wants to draw like a picture book for his daughter, but he says, but I'm not good at art. So he commits murders and kills yeah, that's the one. Kills all these other kids in gruesome ways so that he can draw realistically the pictures. And there was one story which was the Hansel and Gretel type story where the girl, he keeps forcing her to eat stuff until her stomach basically explodes. And it was too visceral and real, and I really felt completely nauseous, and I could not get that feeling out of my head. I would think about it and I would get nauseous again. And I never had this kind of reaction to a comic like ever, you know? And so I was like, I just can't. And so I closed the book on it. And
there's something about like those old EC comics that we would read growing up. They were very monster heavy. So there's serial killers and stuff. I remember some that kind of scared me when I was younger. You know, like the scary clowns or scary Santas always freaked me out, you know? And but similarly for me, I think one of the scariest panels I've ever seen is the opening of Umez's God's left hand, devil's right hand. Just the first page is scissors coming out of So-chan's sister's face, out of her eyeballs. And I'm like, the first page is scissors coming out of a child's eyes. And then the next page, further and further, just until the face is exploding. It was just so gruesome. I still think about that. Yeah. Those first panels.
So I'm gonna be completely honest. It's like I love the horror genre, but I don't like. For me, I'm always gonna be Halloween over Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
The kills are possibly gruesome, but there's no blood in Halloween. You think there's blood. You know, your brain puts blood. There's no blood in Halloween. It's all suspense.
Yeah.
And and you also have the important character in horror. You've got the science guy, and which, you know, in every 1950s monster movie, about 75% of the way through, the one scientist explains, okay, this is what we're dealing with, and this is what we have to do. And that's the only moment where you have to tell everybody, y'all shut up, science moment. Yeah. Other than that, you can kind of talk and play games through the whole movie and you won't miss a lick, but it's like, you know, I can't miss the science moment, you know, like I want to know the motivation and everything. And so you have Dr. Loomis in the Halloween, and you don't really have, except for like maybe the first there's other, like in the series Friday the 13th, there's other series that do kind of have a moment like that, but I don't like the gruesome stuff. It's like I have to do this. It's like it took me forever to watch movies that I had heard rumors of and that I thought were going to be incredibly gruesome and too scary, like I wasn't going to survive. It took me forever to watch The Exorcist all the way through. It took me forever, even longer, to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Hills Have Eyes and Evil Dead, because I was little when the teenagers were seeing it, and they were, you know, saying things like, a girl went to see it and her hair turned white. I heard a kid died, have a heart attack. And, you know, like, and you're like, really? And so,
yeah. So yeah, that's the slasher. I mean, I always prefer a story over blood and gore, and especially with like when you go back to the older films now, than the older films like Evil Dead and stuff, then they seem more fun,
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
playful. But when you're a kid, they're horrifying.
Well,
And
it's
then
like I was able to like kind of, there was an entrance, like a gate. And for me, that gate was Giallo, the Italian horror genre. It was before Bava. I mean, Bava is first, but I mean, like for me, it was Argento, Dario Argento,
mm,
Phenomena, and Deep Red. And these movies have the kind of things which I find the most difficult to watch, which is like scenes that look painful, but the rest of the movie is just so beautiful, like cinematography and music, and it's just amazing. And the stuff like that, watching those in a group got me through the gate, and so I was able to enjoy the gruesome parts a lot more than I ever let myself before. Like if you see Bava's Bay of Blood, Friday the 13th, the first movie, is ripping off all its kills from Bava's Bay of Blood, and you can kind of laugh at them because the blood's like orange.
yeah, it's not like the newer ones from the 2000s and on, where you have like the Hostels or something that are basically like torture porn. And
Yeah,
I just can't watch them.
well,
like
I mean,
that.
all
I
you would
can't
have to
keep
say
them.
to me is it's torture porn, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, I can't watch it. It's like Descent for me was rough. I mean, it's a great movie, great acting, and great, but the claustrophobia is that movie let me know, oh, I have claustrophobia now. I didn't know that. And there's a scene where a lady just kind of gets in this tight position and it's like she can't get out. I could not breathe. And it's, it's something that's like, I'm still in my 50s. I'm still growing. I'm still like, oh, I still got things that I'm like, logically I can process, but viscerally I cannot process. It's back to Umez, it's like I can viscerally, it was too much.
Very visceral, that's for sure. The imagery is very visceral.
So, but going through that though, doing that presentation was another gate for me, because even though I didn't sleep for a month, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I learned a lot, and I found out about Hino Hideshi, and I found out about Koga. I mean, I already knew about Eko Azarak just because
So
I lived in used bookstores and I didn't have any money. So I just looked at stuff, and I only could buy a few things. And so I recognize that. I've never read it. I recognize. And it was Mr. Hashimoto. It's like, oh, you should check out Hino Hideshi. And the first story he recommended to me was Zoroku no Kibyo, Zoroku's strange malady or bizarre malady. And it was so, I got such a pure emotional reaction from it that I was just struck by his genius. And other comics that he did, I'm like, I'm 2 pages in and I'm already 100% like empathetic for the main character's sister. It's like, how did he do that in 2 pages? I'm like, I'm right there, like, oh my God, the poor sister. It's like, I'm ready to cry. And in 2 pages, that's, not everybody can do stuff like that. And obviously the guy had really pain from what he recognizes like industrial environmental stuff. I mean, it had to be. Those images keep coming up. Even in his like happy end comics, there's one comic, it ends and all the kids are like, yay, and they're running down the street, yay, with glee, the end. But in the background is these huge factories with black smoke, blah. It's like, it has nothing to do with the story. And it's like, this guy is, he's got something to say. And I think that's what doing that presentation is kind of got me to start to look at, what are these comics saying? And then I found out about monster theory. And I talked to a Professor Ogi, who's she does shoujo comics and feminist themes in manga and stuff. And she said, well, you know, get your master's and you just got to start from there. You know, it won't start till you get your master's. And so I decided to do it. I had I had this one insurance package from the post office that paid out after 20 years. And I was like, all right, let's do this.
When you studied at your master's, can I ask what your thesis was on?
So I did a creative writing degree, and honestly, I wish in the middle, I wish I would have flipped to literature. But I did creative writing, and creative writing does not have, I mean, it can have, I think, a graduation thesis, but your thesis is your book. So, which is okay if that's your endpoint. And at that time, I wasn't thinking beyond that, and you know, it's one of those things where like I didn't have anybody to ask, and nobody that I talked to knew the answers. If that's one of the times where you're like, I wish I could go back and tell myself, yeah, creative writing degree isn't going to help you a whole bunch. But I wanted, you know, I had a book that I wanted to make progress on about this town and the ghosts of this town. And so,
that actually kind of segues into what I was going to ask about. Okay. I know monster theory. I know you know a ton about yokai, about everything from folklore to urban legends and all the monsters that surround all those. What are some of the ones specific to the Kumamoto area? I actually have a routine every morning, and I have the complete encyclopedia of Mizuki Shigeru's yokai. It's got 900 and some odd yokai in it, and I read one page out loud every morning. Because of COVID, I don't go to the office. I work remotely, and so I don't have a chance to use Japanese with my coworkers except for in Zoom meetings occasionally. So I thought, well, I'm going to read out loud every morning. I'll read about a yokai every morning, and you know, all over the country, lots of overlapping. But I wondered, what are some specific ones for the Kumamoto area?
Well, like one of the most famous ones that you see in Kitaro is that like the big walking wall, you know, that one, Nurikabe.
Yeah.
So that guy, he's like, I think his most popular origin is Fukuoka, which is north of us, but actually in this town, in the mountain over that way, there was a sighting of that. There's a whole bunch of newspaper reports about that area where there's 17 different reports of yokai sightings.
Oh,
back in the
Nurikabe.
1920s, and Nurikabe was one of them. Of course, and this is all over Japan, but like kappa is everywhere. But like, for example, depending on your area, our kappa sometimes called guapa or gapa, and then sometimes called kawataro, like river boy, kawataro, and then in the fall it becomes yamataro. So it's and it's basically like the boogeyman, because whenever a kid would go missing, they would say, okay, kappa got him, pulled him down in the river. And then, but in the fall, it'd be like the kappa took him away to the mountains, and but it would be Yamataro. And actually, a good friend of mine, her mother told me the story about her brother being taken by the Yamataro, and so that's, you know, I'm gonna be interviewing her.
Oh, that's a wild story. I hope they got him back.
They did. But see, what happened was that they're like, our boy's missing, and they talked to like this one older guy in the neighborhood who knew about that kind of thing, and he said, oh, I bet you the Yamataro got him, and I'll tell you where to look, and they went and they found him, something like that.
Wild. And I know, of course, a lot of those yokai and those folk tales are based on, you know, protecting. A lot of the river ones are based on, you know, keeping kids out of the river so they don't drown, right? The kappa, or the one I was reading today, which I didn't know is the rival of the kappa, is the kawazaru, or the river monkey. And and I guess they fight when they cross each other's paths, but the kappa and the zaru, the kawazaru. But you know, we can imagine that, but there's a lot of weird ones that come up too, you know, like the nurikabe, or which kind of don't really have too much explanation for them.
Well, you know, like I can give you a possible explanation for the nurikabe. It's you're drunk and you turn down the wrong road and you're like, this isn't supposed to be a dead end. You know, because it's the story is just appears this wall, and they said to make it disappear you have to kind of ignore it or something like that. There's a couple different ways that you can make it disappear and the wall will go away. But that's, you know,
drunkenness explains a lot for a lot of these.
It's like, how come it took you so long to get home? It's like, I tried to get home, but there was this thing in my way.
Yeah, I always thought of that one as maybe back in the day when people travel long distances on foot, they might reach that kind of, you know, when the runner's roadblock where you just can't move anymore, you're just so fatigued, and then that might be the nurekabe, or yeah, drunkenness is probably a better explanation though.
But here's a weird phenomenon. It's like I didn't know about the I'm blanking on the name. You know, the one kanashibari. You know, like when you're awake and you can't move and you feel a presence and you feel a weight, and
it's like a sleep paralysis.
Yes, sleep paralysis. See, I never had that until I heard about it. And then I got it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I guess it's one of those things that if you don't know it until you hear about it, but then that's like a lot of the urban legends, it's a little bit more explainable. I mean, I guess folklore to some extent, but I'd done a video in the past and talked about the Kuchisake Onna Densetsu, which was the legend of the split-mouthed woman, and it's very clearly documented in newspapers. Started in late 1978. By summer of 1979, it was in every prefecture in the country.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just spread, those urban legends just spread so quickly that, and then eventually they turned into a kind of yokai, or a
That's
kind
right.
of, yeah.
Well, the one guy who is the kind of the modern, not the modern guy, but like I want to say, like about one generation past, who did a lot of this yokai-ology. He kind of posits that yokai are fallen gods, and then gods are like raised up yokai, and you know, it's whether or not they have a festival about them, or whether or not people, you know, not worship isn't the right word, but give, you know, deference to them, or because a lot of the times they have these festivals because they don't want that thing to get mad. So it's like, that's why you have big jinjas at every volcano, is because they don't want that dragon to wake up.
That makes sense. And of course, once they're, I mean, you have the whole, you know, maybe I read a Tim Robbins book years and years ago about the disappearance of Pan, you know, Pan, the mythical creature, because people stopped believing in Pan. It was an old god that people forgot about, so he starts to disappear, right? Same thing with yokai or these urban legends. If people don't talk about them or don't worship them, then eventually they just disappear.
Yeah. It's I think, like I read about this one theory, and it's kind of been debunked. The guy doesn't have a lot of credibility, but Robert Graves wrote about mythology, and he had a theory about how a lot of those stories are based on like actual tribes, and it's the tribe leader would be Zeus, and when he died, the next Zeus would be chosen, and they would have conflict with other tribes like the Athena tribe, and instead of all-out war, they would kind of combine and say, okay, how about Athena's the daughter, or, you know, like they would just kind of create these relationships. And even though it was kind of debunked, though, it's very interesting, and I think there's some possibilities to the idea of like how monsters and gods get created, and, you know, how it's how, yeah, it's just how you perceive them, that belief matters. And if sometimes the situation changes, that god just becomes a freaky little monster, or the freaky little monster becomes an important, like Amabie, you know, nobody gave a crap about Amabie.
There was only one drawing of Amabie ever, and it's an awful drawing. If you go look at the Wikipedia, you can see it on there. It's Creative Commons. But since then, I mean, I think I have a Junji Ito up there that he did a collaboration with the other Junji.
Morohoshi did a nice one too.
Morohoshi did a nice one. Yeah, I mean, that was the big over these last 2 years. Oh, for people that don't know, the Amabie is the yokai that protects against pestilence that walked out of the sea. And obviously it probably happened during a plague era. And then people had this belief that if you saw the Amabie, then it would protect
you. The Amabie actually told people, it's like, draw a picture of me and you'll be protected against disease. So, you know, he's basically like viral marketing is what he's trying to build a brand.
And he definitely built a brand, or it definitely built a brand over this last 2 years.
That's right. That's right.
There's Amabie stuff.
He was waiting. He was biding his time. He was like, yeah, I'm just waiting for the search engines to catch up.
Yeah, and waiting for a good pandemic to join.
And what's hilarious is like the research that I've read recently in the last couple months, books that have come out about comics or monsters, is that Amabie has already made its way into scholarship about, you know, about monsters. And so,
well, it makes sense. Like we were saying, if you don't talk about them, they disappear. But all it takes is one big event like a COVID pandemic for people to search out,
or somebody like Shigeru, who made his whole world, populated them with all these creatures, and it became an animated show, and you know, and so it kind of a new generation discovered it, and then they kept bringing back Kitaro. Like Kitaro was, when I came to Japan, was almost forgotten. I mean, everybody knew him, but it wasn't on TV, and like nobody was talking about him. But then, you know, little time passes, and then you have the 4th series, the 5th series, the 6th series. So it just keeps coming back.
Yeah, and you know, like if it wasn't for Mizuki, I wouldn't know about like Toriyama Sekien or these other like woodblock artists from back in the day that, you know, that had all of you know, would do woodblock prints of yokai and of monsters and stuff, and then having those mangaka bring those back into the popular culture, and then you see the resurgence again, like you said, with Gegege no Kitaro coming back later, becoming popular again. Now, my kids love him. My kids will sit there and binge Kitaro, right? And a lot of those characters were from, you know, were long lost at one point.
That's true. And like some of the, like I scoured this series because I was looking for, I had the inkling that he probably had some mermaid stuff. So I scoured the series looking for the mermaid stuff, and I found some. I also found this little fish guy.
Oh, nice.
Guy here.
Yeah, the blue one.
Yeah, he just makes a really short appearance, but in kind of a wacky racers kind of episode. but yeah, I'm seeing a whole bunch of, and I'm, you know, I kind of looked them up, like wonder what this is, wonder what this does, and he would take like a Japanese folktale, but he would borrow some visual imagery from another culture and just kind of slap it on.
Meld it together to make it more interesting. Make it more interesting or more palatable.
Yeah. So it's good that, you know, people connect to Sekien through him, because Sekien's doing the same thing, really. I mean, he's kind of had applied his own sense, because a lot of yokai were things that happened, and they were sounds, and they were not physical creatures you could see. They were in the dark. They didn't, you know, it was Oni forever were just unseen spirits that caused mayhem and trouble. And so it was the Chinese Buddhist imagery, which was adapted from the Indian imagery, and that kind of gelled, a whole bunch of different things gelled together to be the image of what we have as Oni now. But originally was not, yeah, that's right.
With the club and the horns and the fangs and the red skin or blue skin or.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So yeah, it's interesting. So we like to look at these. We want traditional, but there's no such thing. It's like eventually everything in history, somebody went, hey, let's do this thing, and it caught on. You know, it for me, like, just something is traditional. It's super interesting, but it like validity wise, is it a good story? That's what matters to me. Not like, oh, they had this for 100 years. It's good for when I tell the story. And I want people to be vested in it, but
yeah, add some credibility to it.
Yeah.
I do notice that there's a lot of things in, especially the yokai world, where it's heard, not seen. There's no imagery of it. I remember having a girlfriend years ago try to explain what a tsuchinoko was to me. And I was like, but no one's ever seen it? Then how do you know it's small and fast? And she's like, no one's ever seen it. I'm like, this is so confusing to me.
It's gotta be.
Best we have like a real, you know, like everything must be visual. Very visual. I mean, sometimes you have like the, you know, the sounds in the night, but the apparition or the sun, but it always comes to manifest itself at some point, right? I mean, that's the big tease in the haunted house stories, you know. You have to see what it is at the end.
Well, here's one kind of theory that I have. I'm sure I mentioned it before on the channel. It's just, I think that the focus on the visual in this culture, and I think it comes from the constant learning of how to write kanji and kana so that it's aesthetically pleasing. You know, like once you get past 3rd or 4th grade in America, you know, as long as it's readable, no one's gonna give you crap about what your A's look like, you know. But here, like, you have to get the kanji and in an order. Yeah. And they're asymmetrical but somehow balanced, and I think that much focus on that much balanced asymmetry gives you a sense of design and a visual sense. It's built into you, not genetic, but it just, you know, from the practice. And so I think it's a more visual culture. It's like we have letters to the comic books, like in the back of Spider-Man or whatever. They have pictures.
Good point.
And so it's a much more robust. In America, you have a glut of comic writers, and then there's the few artists that, you know, that have to deal with the
deal with the hard work. It's both hard work, but you know.
Yeah, but we all know that the artists, really, their work is a little bit harder.
They're pulling the all-nighters, that's for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, it's with the you're mentioning about the pictures in the back. That's one thing when I started getting into the older manga, is especially like anything from you know, the pretty much 60s on, was the encouragement of reader submissions. So you'd always get these little thumbnails in the back of these magazines or these manga that have all these reader submissions of their manga, and then sometimes they end up becoming assistants to the manga that they're interested in.
That's right. I mean, I just talked about this. You know, I introduced that guy Morimatsu Tadashi, who was submitting stuff to all the Kashihon, and especially the hard-boiled stuff. And then he ended up being Sato Masaaki's assistant and went on to do his own stuff. And he's from Kumamoto. So I'm like discovering more and more.
It ties into everything.
It's all connected. You know?
I don't want to keep you all night, so maybe just like 1 or 2 more questions. But you asked me, so I have to ask you. Okay. There's a flood, there's an earthquake, the wrath of God comes down. You have time to grab just one manga, one book. Oh boy. Gotta run out the house. What's it gonna be?
Okay, I was gonna say if it's comics, like the comic books, I'd probably get my Mad Comics #2 that I inherited from my uncle.
Oh, nice, nice.
So I'd probably grab that one.
That's definitely also, if you got it from inherited it from your uncle, it's got some sentimental value to it.
Yeah, it's in the family. It's in the family. But manga, oh boy, that is a tough one. See, when you answered my questions so quickly, I was like, oh man, I am in deep shit.
I mean, like I had said before, you know, just because it kind of brought me back into Jigoku Kozo, just brought me back into being really into manga. But I have some stuff that's worth more money, or that I should probably, considering that there is just a flood, I probably should go for the money shot. But
yeah,
I went for sentimental reasons instead.
I don't know like what I have that's like super valuable. You know, I might have a couple rare things here and there that I own, but for me, like I would probably take my Captain Ken. Maybe I want to get something that would be hard for me to get again.
Rarity goes a long way, right?
Yeah. Older Captain Ken, which is still, it's not that hard maybe to get, but it's just some kind of thing, something. It's my favorite Tezuka series. I'll show you. I saw it first back in the 80s in a Tezuka book a friend of mine had, and I was like, there's a cowboy, but he's wearing one of those kamikaze headbands. I was like, what's up with that?
Yeah, there's something going on here.
Something going on, and it's a science fiction story, so a couple of different things going on there. You have samurai, it's not samurai, but like a western, you've got Japanese, and then you've got science fiction all kind of mixed together. I actually did a blog post about science fiction westerns, and this is big on the list.
Oh yeah, I love those kind of melds, because I mean, basically the samurai stuff is America's version of a western, right? Yeah. And a lot of times they have, you know, kind of similar kind of protagonists and stuff like that. But then you start throwing something like time travel, aliens, some sort of, you know, like some crazy science fiction twist on it. It's always fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
maybe I don't want to keep you all night. So how about just one last thing really quick?
Sure.
Interest outside of manga. We've been talking so much about manga and monsters, of course, and yokai and Kumamoto. What else are you into?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I like to draw, and I started when I quit K1. I tried to go professional, and I did some work for Disney and Warner Brothers magazines, and it was a good experience, but I realized I don't want to draw other people's stuff as much as I want to draw my own stuff. I spent a couple years trying to sell my own characters and this kind of thing. I got a couple of jobs out of that, and I still, like, I did the October Kayfabe-tober challenge, and I tried to draw a picture every day. I ended up having to play catch up a lot. And so that was, but it was good that I actually did all 31 drawings, even though I didn't actually do one every day. It was just good for the soul. This is the year that I accomplished stuff.
Yeah.
I've lost 7-8 kilos, and I've pretty much kept to my diet. I cheat a little bit. And,
I did see I did see one of your drawings. It was kind of a Gaijinguy kind of like rendition, something that you kind of, but your own twist on it. But yeah, I think that you maybe posted.
So I've designed a bunch of t-shirts and stuff. I did actually design an official Black Sabbath t-shirt for like a Japan only
Japan tour t-shirt.
It was like they had a special event, Black Sabbath Resurrection or something like that. Like for a limited Japanese market, a limited Japanese release. I did like 3 or 4 different designs for that. I did some stuff for like K1 athletes, And so that kind of thing is always, I'm always gonna be drawing. And then the other thing is like writing. I like to write. And so this month I'm doing NaNoWriMo, but I've been working on the research stuff. So I finally
you're doing some editing for Mangaverse as well, right?
Yeah. I've always been doing zines. My first time to comic market was in 2000, and I didn't know what it was about at all. So me and my friend, we slapped some art together that we had been working on and made kind of an impromptu copybook. And we didn't know you're not supposed to do this, and we were like giving them away to people. You know, you're not supposed to just like walk around giving your zines to people. It's you know, that's why they have the booths and the sign up process and stuff. Then you can give your shit away if you want. That from 2002 started making bilingual, basically world comics zines, introducing Japanese to overseas comics content. Like a lot of my friends said I was their first exposure to Hellboy and Sin City and a lot of these things, which now it's like there's dedicated American comic shops in Japan. And so it's a lot. But even though, I mean, they don't know what to buy. So I was like, you know, making these kind of guides. I made a whole guide to the Marvel Civil War event, to the DC Infinite whatever event. I can't remember. They all run together. But I was, so that's kind of what I'm into. I don't play, I play board games. I don't really play video games that much, except for now I'm doing that Ring Fit Adventure.
Oh, nice. It's a great exercise.
It is, man. My glutes, man, my glutes.
To be honest, I rarely game anymore. I have an Oculus that I use once in a while for the VR stuff, but I really got out of video games, and I don't really even watch that much animation these days just because of time. I'd rather spend my time either reading manga or writing. I love zines. Zines are great, you know. And then nowadays, more than I did a lot of zine making in the past, and I used to print them off at work in the copy room when no one was looking, and then I had a couple printed here in Tokyo from the cheapest publisher I could find.
Oh man,
and stuff like that.
I remember the one time that all my stuff is like last minute. It's like finishing up at the last minute, and so I've never had something really nicely printed. It's always been, you know, 2 a.m. at Kinko's. Yeah. And so I remember one time I had just printed up 60 nice color covers. I did all the copies and everything. And the guy at the counter forgot to charge me for the color covers, which is the most expensive part. I said, I think you forgot to charge me. But no, I didn't.
Okay.
Profit that show, pure profit.
Yeah. I've done a lot of that last minute zine copy making before, Design Festa event or something like that. But nowadays, all of my zine making is right here with these videos. It's just become much easier to do it this way.
I have to say, you know, it's like connecting with you and all the wonderful people who comment and share our stuff has been such a positive experience for me. And I know I obsess too much on how I make my videos, and I should be putting out more, but I can't help it. I can't help it.
Your personality is in your videos, which is why I like your videos. So if I have to wait 2-3 weeks for a new video, that's fine, as long as you're in it.
Well, I appreciate that, because, you know, like right now I'm ready to talk about all this stuff over here, behind here and this. I'm ready, but it's like I've got the script done, I've got the stuff out, and it's just finding the right time and getting her done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, definitely looking forward to seeing more of the videos, and it's awesome to sit down and have this chat.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, and we just got to figure out how we're gonna share this.
Yeah, and how we're gonna edit it together. But I'm sure that we will get it out, and everyone will dig it the most.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Alright, so that was my interview of Gaijinguy. Be sure to hop over to his channel to check out his interview of me and all of his other excellent videos on manga. Thanks to everyone who subs, likes, and shares. You keep watching them, I'll keep making them, and until next time, mata ne.